G'day everyone, my name is Troy Waller. Welcome to our latest webinar for DLTV. This is the second webinar in a series that DLTV are putting on. We've got more information for you. If you look here on this holding slide here, you can see dltv.vic.edu.au/subscribe, and you can get the DLTV newsletter, and also the upcoming webinars are on there as well. So this webinar is going to be recorded and available on the DLTV website within 10 days from now. So the other thing too is if you've got questions that are specific to DLTV today, then please go back to their website and they'll be able to and reach out to them through there, and they'll be able to help you. So again, my name is Troy. I'm from Microsoft Australia Education. My job description, or my job role title, is Learning Delivery Specialist, which is just a fancy way of saying that I am a former teacher. I have had 20-something years in education. 16 of those are in schools, mostly in primary school. So my job is to travel around the country, mostly the southern states, but national as well, to share all the great things that you can do with, Microsoft Education and Microsoft tools, etc. Today we're going to have a look at Teams, specifically around using Teams as a remote learning tool, but we do have a whole lot more available to you from Microsoft. So you can pop into this link here, aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning. That is our landing page, and then it's also a launching page for everything Microsoft Australia has to say on this topic of remote learning. Now, as we're all being, told, other states have already gone back to school. South Australia's gone back. Victoria's making noises. Who knows what's going to happen, how long this is all going to be relevant to us, at least, the idea of remote learning. But I've got a feeling it's in Victoria, it's going to be a little bit longer than maybe some of the other states. Having a look here, the slides and recordings, if you want to get the slides and recordings of our earlier webinars from Microsoft, please pop into the ones that we've done for the DET. That's their aka.ms/DET webinars. There's also a version of this webinar that's on there as well, but remembering if you want specifically this one, it'll be made available to you via the DLTV guys. And I just also want to thank them for having me. I really appreciate getting the opportunity to share some of this stuff with you guys. All right, so here's our agenda today. This is what we're going to do. We're going to, first of all, have a little bit of chat about Microsoft 365 and Teams, its relationship to each other, and then we're going to do a bit of a Teams overview. I'm going to take you through some of the basics of Teams. Then we're going to look at setting up your class team. We're going to look at holding an online meeting using Teams, and then we're also going to look at resources to help you get started. Now, I do want to also take a moment to share that I'm going to really come at this from a sort of a generic approach to Office 365 and a generic approach to Teams. And what I mean by that is it's going to be different for different schools, different sectors. If you're in the DET but using the central tenant, it's different to if you're in the DET and using your own tenant. If you're coming from a Catholic school or an independent school, the way that it's been set up for your school is going to be different from every other school. So I'm just going to sort of come along and speak more sort of generically, assuming that everything's switched on. But when you jump into Teams, you may find that some of these policies, some of the policies that have been set is going to be switching things off and all that kind of experience. All right, so just be ready that your Teams experience might be slightly different because of the way it's been set up at your school. But the thing I want to draw your attention to first is the Office 365 start page is www.office.com. Okay, so you can go in there, you can sign in. Now, when you sign in to office.com, you need to remember it's your school email address and your password. Now, if you are from the DET, if you have an EduMail email address, you don't use EduMail, all right, because of the way the DET have set up with their on-prem email and they're in the cloud email and all kinds of things are going on there. So please remember, if you're coming from the DET, then you need to use your TO number at education.vic.gov.au. That's your TO number at education.vic.gov.au. But if you've got your own tenant, that is that you're using your own email address from your school, then just try using that first before you try the TO at education.vic.gov.au. But for our friends in Catholic schools and independent schools, it'll just be your normal email address. Okay. All right. So let's talk about this, the building blocks for remote learning. So Microsoft Teams is the hub for Office 365. So this rich service allows all aspects of the teaching and learning experience to be met using the full suite provided by Microsoft, bringing everything together into a shared workspace where students and teachers can chat, call, share files, work with learning apps, and yes, hold effective lessons remotely. So Teams delivers a unique end-to-end lesson experience that brings back the human element of face-to-face teaching while helping students stay focused before, during, and after the meeting. So when you look here at the building blocks for remote learning, looking at that slide there, we see that up the top there we've got course materials and management, right? So your course materials can be held in Teams, OneNote, or even in SharePoint. Now remember, Microsoft is an ecosystem, we're a platform. So we're not just talking about the tools that Microsoft provide, but definitely seeing us as an ecosystem. Our tools will integrate and work well with each other. In terms of your video, well, if you're going to be uploading video content and sharing video content, well, that's over here. So you're going to be using Teams, but Stream integrated with Teams. But when it comes to our lesson streaming and our video recording, that's going to be using Stream as well. For assessments and assignments, well, we're going to be using Teams, of course. You see that's a common denominator in every one of my little rectangles there. But we're going to be using Forms and other parts of Office 365 and also OneNote as well, and also the integration with OneDrive. Inclusive learning, something very near and dear to my heart. So things like immersive reader built into Teams, using Office Lens with immersive reader and Teams. If you don't know much about that, you can check out some of our other webinars that we did for the DET. I do a really, I think I do a really good webinar there on accessibility. The other thing too is our integration with things like Outlook, and there's definitely some analytics baked into Teams as well. So My Analytics and Power BI are standalone, but there's stuff built into Teams. And then also creating your cohorts, so creating your class, some of the different teams, some of the different apps that we have in there for you as well. All right, so the thing about Teams is Teams is a hub. Everything is connected, all right? So it's a digital hub tailored for both collaborative work and learning, and Teams brings your conversations, your meetings, your content, your apps and assignments all together in one place. So have a look. First thing we do is we're able to use our calls, all right? So that's voice calls and video calls. We also have chat and transparent chat and private chat, and then we also have the teams themselves, and that's going to be more clear to you as we move along. The other thing is you can bring in your Microsoft apps, okay? So your Microsoft apps and the programs that you know and love work really well inside of Teams, whether that's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, OneNote, etc. And maybe some of the others that are new to you, like Stream and Forms. But we also have the ability to bring in our third-party apps, right? So you can bring in things like YouTube and Wikipedia and Wakelet, etc. You can even bring in your Google Drive space. You can connect your personal Google Drive space to Teams, so you can be accessing your OneDrive files and your Google Drive files all within that Teams space, which is nice. So it's not Teams or Google, right? It's Teams together with Google. The other thing is with your assignments, right? So we have OneNote. We also have the stuff that's there in Teams and the ability to integrate there with Flipgrid as well. But I'm going to talk much more about that as we go on today. So talking about your classroom, Microsoft Teams makes creating and managing your collaborative classroom really easy. So the first thing is we've got OneNote Class Notebook. Right, so if you know anything about OneNote and OneNote Class Notebook, then you know that that's integrated really well into Teams. Okay, so that allows teachers to organize interactive lessons, deliver personalized learning right from inside Teams. The other thing is we want to empower student voice. So we want students to not just be on a one-way trip here hearing from us, but they're able to communicate with us, communicate with each other. So that rich, persistent conversation experience in Teams makes learning more visible to the entire class with text, video, voice, using integrations like Stream, which I've talked about already. The other thing we've got is we've got the class avatars and emojis and stickers, all that sort of fun stuff, that social media style stuff that we're used to using in our conversations. That comes into Teams as well. So that brings this sort of natural, fun, fluid learning experience as well. And as I talked about before, the ability to share your content with those embedded Office 365 apps and files, right? So it embeds those files and those apps into the experience so teachers can quickly access the Office 365 apps they already know, love and use, right? Okay, so in terms of getting Teams and understanding how to use Teams, well, it provides consistent experience across devices, right? So there is definitely a free offering, but those of you that are in schools, it's been paid for by your school. Almost every school in Victoria has got access to this, and it is free to schools as well. Okay, so there is a basic license that schools can access, so everybody can have this for free. So there's a couple of ways you can access Teams. First of all, through the desktop client. There's a dedicated Windows, Mac OS and Linux client that you can download to your machine. That's where you're going to get the best experience, is in that full dedicated installed app. However, we also have apps for your Android and iOS tablets and phones. All right, so again, it's a dedicated app. You're going to get a good experience, but remembering it's not going to be as feature laden and feature rich as that desktop app on your Mac or on your PC. There's also a browser app. Okay, so you don't necessarily need to install any software. It is going to be a little bit of a slower experience, but nevertheless, it's still very good. And there's a lot of features. The difference between the browser and the desktop app is really quite negligible, but there is some difference. So whether you're using Edge, whether you're using Chrome, Safari, Firefox, you can use the Teams app for your browser. And there's the download link there if you wanted to access it. It's aka.ms/getteams, and that will direct you to where you need to go to download it for your favorite device. All right, now let's talk about Teams, and the way that we're going to approach this is we're going to talk about before, we're going to talk about during, and we're going to talk about after. All right, so Teams supports your lessons by bringing everything the class needs for a meeting into one place. It delivers that unique end-to-end experience, as I said before, brings that human element of face-to-face interaction, all right? But again, we want to talk about before, during, and after the lesson, because there's a few things we need to get set up in advance, things that we need to remember while we're delivering our online lesson, and things that we want to do afterwards. So in terms of before, we want to create the class team. We're going to do that today, and then we're also going to schedule our online class or lecture. So to ensure the lesson's productive, students can prepare ahead of time. They can be in the team even though the meeting hasn't started, right, this video chat, and they can review previous content, engagements, and collaborate on documents. Now, during the lesson, we're going to present our content to the students, we're going to record our lesson for later viewing, and we're going to manage conversations and questions. So once the lesson begins, the teacher can use a variety of features that help focus attention, drive engagement, and foster inclusion, such as that high fidelity audio and video, the live captions, the real-time translation, co-authoring of apps, digital whiteboard, distraction-free backgrounds, and sometimes even distracting backgrounds. And then afterwards, we want to be able to access our lesson recording. We want to view responses to the conversations, and then we want to continue to chat and collaborate on documents and learning materials, student to student, as well as student to teacher. So after the lesson, all the content, including the recording, the chat, the notes, the digital whiteboard, the files, it's saved in a persistent conversation that helps the class continue the discussion. Nothing need get lost in the cracks. So let's talk about what we do before. All right, so I told you we're going to look at before, during, and after. So before, we want to create a class team. All right, we're going to get the best experience by bringing our class into a class team. And then we're also going to look at how we schedule our online class or lecture. So when we create a team, we can have 5,000 members in that team. All right, so you can have 5,000 students in the one team. But there's a couple of things I want to draw your attention to. First of all, students can't leave the team. So if I create a team, make them join a team, then they're stuck in that team, meaning that they can't just uninvite themselves and then I have no idea that they're gone. It's invite only. Okay, so you can't stumble across a team, and it's hidden from others. All right, so when you create a class team, it's automatically hidden. There's a class materials folder as well, which is read only for the students, but read and write access for the teacher. Now, remember I told you there's 5,000 members of the team. That's true. However, if you're wanting to use the assignments features and also the OneNote class notebook, they only support a maximum of 200 students. That's going to increase in the future. And look, for those of us that are in K-12 space, that's not going to be an issue. But you know, when you get into university and you've got huge cohorts, that might be more of an issue for some of those institutions. But for us, 200 students is going to be enough. So remembering, whilst we can bring 5,000 in, it's really only a 200 max if we're going to use everything. Now you can see here that there's 4 different types of teams that you can create, and there's the other team, the staff team, professional learning community, and the class team. Today we're going to specifically on the class team. The class team will create a class notebook, a OneNote class notebook, and the staff team will also activate the assignments features as well. Okay, so I had a bit of an issue there. I'm just making sure I'm still back. Clara, can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming in loud and clear.
Okay, great. All right, so when we're adding our students to our class, there's a couple of ways we can do this, or more than a couple of ways. First of all, we can send them an invite link. We can send it by email. They click on the link, they're in the team. Another way is we can send them a join code, and I'll show you when you come into Teams how you can actually join a team via a code. And you can also add the students individually, or you can add them as a distribution group. All right. Now, in the long term, what we want to see is that IT, working behind the scenes, starts to build those class teams using things like student information system data and all that kind of thing. So if you've got, you know, an awesome IT team at your school and they're going to help you do that, fantastic. That's where you want to go in the long term. But in the medium term, or even in the short term, it's definitely self-managed, and you can add your students quite easily. Now, we're going to make these slides available to you. So I've thrown this slide in because it's a really good sort of overview of the basics of Teams. I'm not going to talk to this one so much as take you in and show you, you know, inside Teams and what it looks like. But you can go back and access that a little bit later. All right, so let's jump into Teams. So you can see here that I'm on my Office 365 start page, office.com. Teams as an icon is sitting here. All right, so if I did have the full version, I could install that, and I can open that straight from my PC or my Mac, excuse me, or my iPad. But if I'm coming in through the browser, then I can just access it by clicking on this button here. Now you can see here that when I come into Teams, I can see all my teams. I've got it here in tile view. So these are all the teams that I have already, that I'm already a member of. But up here where it says join or create a team. All right, so remember I told you before that if you get a Teams code, when you click on that button there, you can actually enter your Teams code there. So you could send that by email to the students, and then they can click on that and they're already automatically a member of the team. They'll have to sign in, but once they're in, they're in. So I don't have to be punching in email addresses. Okay, but I can also create a team. So let's go ahead and do that. Now you can see here there are 4 types of teams that I have the option for. Now, I told you before, we're going to play around today in class teams because that creates for us a class notebook. I know I'm having a bit of trouble with the internet here today, guys. I really apologise for that. I've probably got the worst internet in Australia today. But I can come in, I can create a class team. That will create assignments features, and it will also set up for me a OneNote class notebook. Professional learning community team will set up a professional learning community OneNote. Staff team will set up a staff OneNote, and then the other team will not set up any OneNote, and it also will not activate assignments. So when we're working with kids, we definitely want to be in here in the class notebook. So I'm going to click on that now. Now I create my team really easy. So I'm going to call this 2020. It's good to put your year in there. So that way, in terms of naming conventions, if you want to use it next year, you can call it 2021 or whatever. So you're not just, you know, trying to regurgitate the same name and you're going to get all sorts of clashes and bits and pieces. So I'm going to call this 2020. I'm going to say that this is class 5T. I just made that one up. And any other codes and anything you want to put in the title. I could create a team using an existing team as a template, but in this case, I'm just going to create a brand new team. Okay, now here's where I could add my students. Okay, so I've got my little students button here. I could add my students just by searching them through the Active Directory of my Office 365 client. So for example, I'm looking for Travis Smith. I can click on him and add him as a student. I can add all my students, all right? I can also add teachers by going in here, all right? Now, I just want to stress, it's really a good idea not to add your students at this stage, because if you add your students at this stage, what happens is they're going to get an invitation to a team that's not finished. So my suggestion to you definitely is don't add your students right away. I'm just a little bit frustrated by the internet here today. It's just a little bit slow, so apologies for that. Okay, so here we go. So the team has been created, 2025T. First thing I want to do is I want to choose a nice little icon, a nice little avatar for my class. Now it's a grade 5 class, so I'm going to do something a little bit fun. I'm going to throw in maybe a campfire. All right, and that's going to set my avatar. All right, you do need to think about the names of your teams and all these kinds of things in advance, because when you try to change the team name, it's not so easy to do. All right, so there's my team. Now it's created for me a general channel. All right, and we'll talk about channels in a moment. And I've also got a series of, you can see up here, I've got my posts, my files, my class notebook, my assignments, grades, etc., all ready to go. Now, rather than take you through that, I'm going to actually take you to one that I've already created. And I'm going to come in here to 2026G. So this is one that I created a little bit earlier. This is my demo team. Now, first thing I want to draw your attention to, you can see here that there are other channels. All right, so I've got my general channel, which we saw is created for every team. Can't change it, can't rename it. Every team has a general channel. But then I can add channels here. All right, so I'm just going to quickly add a channel. And let's say, let's do a performing arts channel. All right, it's a standard channel, accessible to everyone. I could make it a private channel that is hidden, and I have to invite individuals to that, but this is a class team. I want everyone to see everything. I want to automatically show this channel in everyone's list. Okay, so I don't want it to be a hidden channel. And then that's going to add the channel. All right, now you can see now I've got Chinese, literacy, maths, PE, performing arts, which is the one I just created, science, social studies, etc. It's really easy to create channels. All right, and what I've done, because this is a class team, each one of these channels is actually a subject. Okay, so you can set this up however you want. All right, you don't necessarily have to set it up this way, but this is the way I've done it for my little grade 6 class. Now, you can see that in every channel, we've got posts, files, and notes. All right, so look, in literacy, we've got posts, files, and notes. In performing arts, in science, posts, files, and notes, except for the general channel. In the general channel, we don't have notes, but we have posts, files, class notebook, assignments, grades, and I've added another tab there for insights. All right, and I can add even more tabs, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so you can see here that first thing I've got is I've got my post tab. Now my post tab is where I can have my conversation. So this is that very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very social media kind of experience, right? That we know and love, that we experience whether on Twitter or Facebook, etc. So I can come down here and start a new conversation. All right, so down the bottom here I can say, hi guys, how are you? And then that gets thrown into the conversation. Everybody that's a member of that team can come into the general channel and they can see that post. Now, if I went into Chinese, we've got a whole nother series of posts. So the conversations are directly relevant to each of these domains or each of these channels that I've created. All right. Now I could reply to that if I was, wanting to, comment to somebody else, for example. I can also do the emoji responses up there as well. But when I come down here, you can see I've got a series of different options down here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into format, because I want to show you that here's where I can make my post, a little bit more exciting, right? So I can do things like bold, italic, underline, strike through. I can highlight, play with fonts, and throw in links and all that kind of stuff as well. The other thing I can do is I can @mention people. So if I wanted to draw someone's attention, I can say @mention Stephen, right? So he's a member of that team. And then when I do that, Stephen is going to get a notification up here in his activity feed. He'll get a notification saying that someone's drawn, someone's mentioned him. I can also @mention the entire channel. So I start typing channel. Oop, gotta spell it right. And then you can see there's the general channel. Okay, so I can @mention that. Everybody that's following that channel is now going to get a notification as well. Or I can do the dreaded @mention team, and that means that everybody that's a member of the team is going to get a notification drawing them to here. Now, what I mean by notifications is when I'm up in my activity feed, these are all the just like your Facebook feed or your Twitter feed, things that are somehow relevant to me right across teams, not just in this team specifically, right? But if I have multiple teams, I'm going to get my notifications all happening in there. Let's go back into my team here. All right. So the other thing I can do is what's called a announcement. So I can make an announcement, and I could say webinar happening now. Excuse me. Webinar happening now. I can change the color if I want. I can add some really nice animations. Let's go with that one there. Okay, and then I can put everything that I want to put in there, and then everybody will get notified. I can also post in multiple channels. I'm working from home. Sorry about that. You can hear my dog. So I can post in multiple channels as well. So that's what I can do there. Now, the other things that I can do down here in the posts is I can attach files. Okay, now you can see here, because I've synced my Google Drive and my OneDrive, so I can access files from Google Drive, from OneDrive, uploading from my computer, and also right across my teams and channels from the multiple teams that I'm in. I can be adding those into the conversation there. I've got the ability to throw in my emojis. I've got the ability to throw in animated GIFs, and I've also got a series of stickers there, and the stickers can be personalized, and you can change them with text, etc. And I could also start a meeting, a video chat right now inside the post area. All right, so that's my posts. The other thing that I've got over here is I've got files. So inside our class team, you can see here I've got a class materials folder that is read only for the students. So I can upload everything that I want them to be able to access but not change. I put in there. Outside of that, I can create files in here. I can create new folders, so new directories and subdirectories. I can start new Word documents, all kinds of things inside in here. And here's where also I can add my cloud storage, right? So I can bring in existing SharePoint sites, Dropbox, Google Drive, etc., bringing everything into that one team space. So again, remembering you can happily bring along your Google space. The other thing that we've got over here is we've got a class notebook. Now, today's not really a class notebook workshop, but if you haven't explored OneNote Class Notebook, please do. Just hopefully this is going to load. Sorry about this, it's a little bit slow. But the Class Notebook, if you haven't seen Class Notebook before, please do a search using your favorite search engine and look into the awesomeness of Class Notebook. Those of you that do know Class Notebook, please know this: it is fully integrated inside of Teams. So this is just Class Notebook online. It's OneNote online through the browser, but the browser inside Teams. I can take it into the browser outside, all right, of Teams. I can also open it down in the app, so I can be connected, because it's sitting in the cloud. I can be connected through various apps and various devices, even though it's sitting inside the Teams space. I've got a collaboration space in here, so this is where all my students work together. Again, go and explore all the cool things about OneNote Class Notebook. I've got a content library where I can keep all my content, again, read only just for the students, and then I've got all my students added here. So OneNote users, when I add a student to my team, they are automatically added to my class notebook. Now, the other thing, can you see here in my collaboration space, I've got maths, literacy, Chinese, and science, all right? These are corresponding to these channels. The reason why I haven't got performing arts and social studies is because I haven't actually opened up the notes section. What I mean by that is, have a look at this. If I come to performing arts, you see up here where I've got notes. When I click on the notes tab in performing arts as a channel, what it actually does is it creates a page inside the class notebook, but it's accessible from this channel. All right, so you can see here, we're inside OneNote, but where does that live? That lives inside my collaboration space. So I'll show you what I mean. We come back into the General tab. We come back into Class Notebook. Again, sorry for the little bit of a delay there. Oh, that wasn't so bad that time. Now when I come into my collaboration space, you can see we've got Performing Arts now has actually been created as well. So I can access the class notebook specifically to those through those channels to the collaboration space. All right, so keep that in mind. The other thing, the cool thing about creating a class notebook inside Teams is it lives in the school's shared drive space, okay, the SharePoint space, which means that it's not sitting in your personal OneDrive, which means you can hand that over to another teacher easily and take others from other teachers without having to fluff around with OneDrive. All right, now you can see I've created a channel, which is good. I think I should probably also share with you a little bit about the activity tab up here. Sorry, I have told you about the activity tab. Here's where we have private chat. Okay, so you will find that some schools have switched off private chat for students, but you'll find most of you will be able to have chats directly with other teachers. Some of you in your schools, the chat is actually available between teacher and student as well, but just check that one out. I can access all my teams. I can also access my assignments across my different teams. All right, but we'll come back to that in a moment because I want to show you some of the cool things you can do with the assignments. And then I've also got calendar, which connects really well with my Outlook calendar. I can do video calls and audio calls. And this is where I said before, this is where I keep my personal OneDrive and my personal Google space. This is different, okay, up here, because this is my personal files. And this one over here is the shared files that everybody can access. Okay. Very good. So the other thing I want to share with you before I get into assignments and grades, the other thing I want to share with you is about creating tabs. All right. So when I click on this, you see I can bring in my Office 365 apps. OK, but I can also bring in third-party apps like Adobe, YouTube, and we've got a whole heap of other third-party apps. This is not an exhaustive list. These are the ones that sort of lend themselves to education, but there's a whole heap more and you can search for them up here. One, for example, that you might be interested in is something like YouTube. Anyway, so yeah, bring those apps in if you want. All right, now can you see here you've got website, right? So I can bring any website in because the browser inside Teams can bring that in, right, as a portal. So for example, you might come from a Compass school where you use Compass all the time. So you can just grab your Compass link. You can call it Compass LMS, let's call it that. We're going to throw our link in there. Do I want to post to the channel about the tab? I do, and then I'm going to hit save. Now what that does is you can see now that the Compass page now sits as a tab across the top of Teams. The other thing I can do is when I come back to my posts, you'll see, oh, just going to get rid of that. You can see I've also got a link to that sitting there in the chat as well. All right, so you can bring anything in. So for example, if I was in my literacy channel and I wanted to draw my students' attention to this ABC Splash article here or series of activities, I can grab that link there, come back into Teams. I'm in the literacy channel. So this is my literacy channel. I'm going to hit the plus. I'm going to add a website. I'm going to say this is adjectives activities. There you go. I'm going to throw that in there. This time I'm not going to post to the channel about the tab. I'm just going to leave the tab across the top. And there we go. So what that means is if I've got a literacy lesson coming up and I want the kids to actually have that website, rather than be sharing a link or sending it by email or posting it somewhere else, I can just throw it as a tab across the top here. At the end of that, I can just remove that. There's nothing permanent about these. Nothing static. We can actually use these in a dynamic sense. But that's great, right? So I could be talking to the kids and saying, you know, kids, I want you to, access yada, 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 and then they know they can just grab it from there. All right. Now, the other thing we can do, let's go into the Chinese channel. And this time I've got this great YouTube clip. this BBC YouTube clip on Chinese. So I just grab the link, come back into my Chinese channel. This time I want to put the tab up here, but I want this to be a YouTube clip. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw my link in there. Search for it. Oh, look at that. It's not going to work. That's okay. I'll just go BBC because I can also search BBC Chinese Learning. There we go. You can see I've done this before. Hit search. And I can actually find my YouTube clips inside here, right? So this one is about Chinese calligraphy. I'm going to post to the channel about that. And now my YouTube clip is sitting there ready to be played. Okay, so it can play directly from inside Teams, and I can and the students can access that. So I could put across the top here at the beginning of the lesson everything I know that they're going to need. All right. So that's one of the really cool things that I can do just using that web portal. So anything that's got a web page, you can use the website portal tab and you can bring that in. All right. So whether it's curriculum documents, learnings, etc. Now, the other one I want to show you is this Insights tab, right? So I'm going to come back to the general channel. I just want to show you Insights because this is one that now, because this is a demo, there's absolutely no data in here, but wait for it to load. Hopefully it's going to come up, but this has actually got some really good analytics data. It's going to show you about the students' connection and activity inside Teams. Here we go. So it's going to show their digital activity. It's going to show the feedback time that it took for me, what's going on for them around communications, etc. I'm sorry I can't show you this data because it's only a demo, but nevertheless, once this starts to be built out with the kids, you're going to find that this data will start to populate and you can export it to Excel, etc. So it's a really good way for you to have a look at what's going on inside your team. Okay, very good. Now the other thing is assignments. All right, so I do want to take you through and show you how you can set assignments. So let's go back into our team, click up here on assignments. I'm going to close some of these tabs down because there's a lot going on here. All right, so here we see this assignments. Now I want to show you what it's like to create assignment, and then I'm going to take you in and show you some assignments that I've already created. All right, but it's really very easy. So I just click create. I can take it from an existing assignment as a template. I create a quiz, which is using Microsoft Forms for multiple choice, short answer, etc. And I can also create an assignment. Now, when I create an assignment, I can set a title. I can categorize that with tags. I can enter my instructions. I can add resources to that. All right, so I can upload something from my personal OneDrive. I can actually open pages from Class Notebook, and I can assign those as part of the assignment. I can throw in links, of course. I can take in even make code. All right, so make code is the coding language inside Minecraft and other things like Meowbit and things like that. The other thing I can do is I can create templates for the students to work in. So I might want them to use a blank Word document or a blank PowerPoint presentation, etc. And then that way they know exactly what it is that they need to submit. I can also upload directly from my device. All right, I can build a rubric. All right, so you can see here, if I was to create a new rubric, you can actually build a rubric out, set the number of points, etc. I can assign the points to this assignment. Who am I going to assign this to? Okay, so right across my different teams, I've only got 2 class teams, but I can assign to different teams, not necessarily just the one I'm in. I can differentiate or assign it to all students, set a due date, of course, the time that it's due, and I can decide whether I want there to be late turn-ins or not. Then when that's ready, I can save it. That is, it's not ready to be assigned to the students, or I can assign it to them then and there. Now I'm going to discard that because I want to show you one that I've already made. And this is an Aboriginal culture assignment. So you can see here at the back end, I can see my students, right? Who has not handed it in, and which ones I've marked and which ones I haven't marked. All right, so I can actually get a bit of a bird's eye view. I can give them direct feedback into that assignment from inside Teams. But if I come in and show you Amanda's one, for example, I can open that up. You can see there's Amanda's assignment. Okay, it's a demo. She hasn't actually done anything, but I can give her direct feedback onto the page. All right, and especially if I've digitally inking, I can ink onto there, or I can give her text feedback, and I can also give her a score, and then I can return that as well. All right, she's also able to use Immersive Reader inside there as well. So That's what it looks like as an assignment. Now, I want to show you the student view. This is what the students actually get to see, right? So it's worth 100 points. There's instructions for them there to watch the Adams Goods video, etc. The reference materials are there, and then there's their actual work that I've set. Now I could set that as a template and upload that, etc. Okay, so that's what that kind of assignment looks like. But I'm going to take it back because I want to show you. You can integrate with forms. So if you know much about Microsoft Forms, you can actually integrate that in there as well. All right. So if I'm going to open, I could open that form and for sure, but I could also give them direct feedback. So there's some really good integration into forms there as well. All right. Now, the other thing I want to share with you is the grades book before we get into booking our call. So the grade book looks like this. All right, so this is one that's actually been populated so you can see what it looks like. So there's all my students, there's all their different assignments, okay, whether that's an assignment or whether it's a quiz, that's in there, and I can actually look at their marks. They've got a cumulative total in there, which is really cool. And then I can take it down a level. If I wanted to look at, say, Juan, I want to see what Juan has been doing. This will actually take me to the student level. All right, so I can see his assignments, I can see what he hasn't handed in, what he has handed in, I can see his marks, and I can also see, you know, what's late, etc. So it's giving me a really good overview of Juan. It's also giving me his cumulative total as well. So that's actually quite handy, and so that lives up here in the grades, the grade book, which lives up here as a tab inside the class team. So obviously the students aren't going to see that. That's just something for me as a teacher. All right. Let's keep moving. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about what goes on during our online session, right? I'm just going to make sure, Clara, you can hear me all good?
Yep, all good.
Yep, okay, I just want to make sure that I haven't dropped out and I haven't lost you guys to the dreaded internet lurgy or something. All right, so let's keep moving. So we're going to present the contents to students, we're going to record our session for later viewing, and then we're going to manage our conversations and questions. So some of you have got the newer rollout of Teams, and you're going to actually see the 3x3, the 9 people on the screen at once. Some of you are still going to be back on the 2x2, which is 4 people on the screen at once. But I want you to notice that even though we've got the 9 here, we still have everybody else appearing as little circles along the bottom. What happens is when someone speaks, they will come from here and they will join the 9. And basically the last person to speak, the person that's spoken longest ago will be bumped off that, all right? So we can't see everybody, we can't see all 30 students at once, but we can see 9 and most of them down the bottom here as well. But you can have 250 students in the video chat at one time, all right? So that's what it's going to look like. Now, it's really hard for me to demo a Teams call because I'm actually in a Teams call right now presenting to you guys, all right? So you're just going to have to trust me having a look at that photo, that's what it looks like, but I can take you in and show you some of those features, right? So I'll show you some of the things that you can do. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to schedule a call. So let's go into Performing Arts, okay? Now in Performing Arts, I'm going to schedule a call now specifically for my Performing Arts lesson. Now what I could do is I could start a meeting then and there, bang, all right, and then anyone that happened to be on there will know that it's, you know, it's happening. But instead what I want to do is I'm going to come in here to the calendar app and I'm going to schedule my meeting, all right? So it's really easy, I just click on new meeting here, all right? Now this is going to be a dance lesson, okay, whatever I wanted to call it. I can invite individual attendees, but the better thing to do is to actually put it in the channel. Now we're in 2026G and we want it to be in the Performing Arts channel. Now what that means is by doing it that way, all my students will actually get the invitation and the call dropped into their Outlook calendar. All right, so that means I don't have to be inviting them individually. Okay, location down here is talking about if there was a room attached to that, but obviously not. So we're going to set this one for, let's set it for 5 o'clock. It's only going to go for half an hour because I don't want to overload my students. Okay, and then that's ready to go. All right, and then what I do is I click send. Okay, and now that lesson is actually being scheduled. So when I come back to my team and I come to my Performing Arts channel, in a moment, that lesson will actually appear, that meeting will actually appear inside that channel as well as in their Outlook calendars. Okay, so assuming that that appears, which it will in a moment, forgive me, it's just this slow internet, what would happen is I would click on that, and I can do so just by clicking the Meet Now button as well, and I get brought into my call. All right, so this is my meeting. Now I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna turn my video off, but this is where all my students would appear. Okay, across here, they can see and hear me, and I can see and hear them, depending on whether we've got the cameras and the mics on. All right, so those of you used to other video apps, you'll know this experience is very much like that. I can share my screen, which is what I'm doing with you guys right now. All right, so you're actually able to see my screen, and I can, if I've got multiple monitors, it'll let me choose which monitor I'm using, etc. I've also got the ability to have a conversation, a chat during my Teams call. All right, so I could be chatting with my students. There's all sorts of back channeling, just like we saw before. We've got the the giffies and the animations and the emojis and all that kind of stuff can be happening in there as well. I have the ability to manage my attendees, right? So I can turn them into presenters. That is, that they have the ability to access the sharing, but they can also mute one another and kick each other out the call. But I can demote them down to attendees, and by doing so means that I have greater control over the call. All right. So imagining that I had my students in here, then I could just go in and click on the ellipses and change things for them in there. The other thing I can do is I can check my device settings. So if I'm having trouble with sound, or I'm having trouble with my camera, etc., that can all be handled inside here. So again, on those ellipses, I went into device settings. The other thing I want to do is I want to start recording. All right, so this is actually now recording my call. So I'm just going to quickly, there we go, we're recording. I'm going to dismiss that. I'm just going to quickly turn on my video and just wave a little bit. So that's making sure that that's recording. And then at the end of my meeting, I can easily just stop the recording. Okay, and then now that's actually going to appear in the channel. All right, but we'll have a look at that in a minute. Okay, so at the end of that meeting, I want to drop out of that meeting. I want to hang up and jump out of there, and then dismiss that. Okay, and what's going to happen very soon is that that meeting is actually going to appear here inside the chat. Okay, whether it's the scheduled chat or whether it's the one that I just created, but the recordings live inside the Teams space, inside the channel. All right, so after that lesson recording, okay, we want to be able to access that lesson. We want to be able to view the responses to the conversations, and we also want to continue to chat and collaborate on documents and learning materials. So that cloud recording is housed in Stream. So you can access it through Microsoft Stream, but it automatically throws a thumbnail to the channel, which means that people that have missed it or want to go back and use it as a reference, they can access it directly from the channel where it was held or where it was scheduled. There's automated closed captions as well. You can turn on the captioning during the meeting, but it also creates captions inside the recording. And there's also a searchable transcript. Thinking about Stream, again, it's part of your Office 365. You don't have to pay for anything, but it's 500,000 total videos can be housed in there, and each video can be up to 50 gigabyte, which, as you know, is a lot of space. Okay, so we've had a look already at the video chat. We've already had a look at our grade book. So I think what I'm going to do now is I think I'm going to throw 2 questions, Clara. So what I might do, Clara's been in the background there answering your questions by text, and I'm sure she's been run off her feet with all 100 and something of you guys. But Clara, have we got any questions that have come up again and again that we might need to answer?
Yes, just have a quick question. Can students view the Insights tab? And is the Insights tab created automatically through the Department of Education rolling out Teams?
Good one. So no, the students can't see the Insight tabs. That's only for the teacher. And you do need to add that app. So it is available to you inside the department, which is fine. But all you need to do is when you come into the general channel, you want to add it as a tab. Now you can see I've already added it there, but you just come in here, you hit the plus button, and you're not going to see it up here because you haven't added it yet. Just start typing Insights. Okay, and it'll come up. You can click on that, and then it'll install onto your into your class team. Any others, Clara? You're on mute, Clara.
Yes. So I have a question. If we're on the DLTV tenant, can we still use the SIS to set up a class team?
Not at the moment. Not at the moment, because of the way that they've actually locked that down. So unfortunately, I have to say no.
Okay, awesome. I do have another trickier question that I was unsure of, but can you link your Google Drive with Teams as well?
Yep, totally. Yep. So that's what I've shared that a couple of times today, and yes, you can.
Awesome. Thank you. I have a teacher. Can a teacher see all of the other class teams in their school? Can a grade 4 teacher assign an assignment to other grade 4 classes, or do they need to be an owner of those grades as well?
Okay, so let's start that. Can you see all the class teams in your school? No, you have to be invited to those teams to be able to see them. That's part of the privacy and, you know, the hiding of those class teams. So if you want to share out to other class teams, you need to be invited to those teams as an owner by the original owner.
Awesome.
Any other questions?
When will the 3x3 grid activate?
So that's been announced. I know that there are some release rings that have already got it, so it should come any time soon. I wish I could give you a date. It's not on my tenant yet either, but I know other people that have seen it appear, so it shouldn't be too long.
Awesome. I also have another one. It says I'm at a DET school with their tenant agreement. We don't have the calendar. Is there a way to get it, or another way to schedule class or meetings?
Good one. Very, very good point. I get asked this probably 2 or 3 times a day. I'm not exaggerating. The reason why many of you in the DET do not see this calendar app, okay, this calendar button, is because your EduMail has not been migrated to Exchange Online. That is, your email is not in the cloud. Your email servers are sitting somewhere in Treasury Place or Spring Street or whatever it might happen to be, and so you're on-prem. Some of you, though, have already had your emails migrated to the cloud, and that means you're able to see the calendar app, because the calendar app requires you, the calendar button, I should say, requires you to have your email in the cloud. All right. So if you're not seeing the calendar button, you have to wait until your email has been migrated over to Exchange Online.
Awesome. Thank you. There is quite a few questions.
Just ask me the easy ones, Clara.
We had a teacher say that she didn't have the call button on her Teams, and she was just unsure how she would be able to get it. I did advise to reinstall Teams or use Teams through the app to see.
Yep. So it may be, the answer to that is, first of all, down here, click on these ellipses and see if it appears down here. But also, if it's missing, it might be because in their tenant, the calls have actually been disabled.
Awesome. So I let her know the right information. Thank you.
All right, so that's it for questions.
Just one more. We've got, how can you stop students from starting the meeting before you join?
Yeah, okay, so what's happening with that is at the moment you can't, but it's definitely one of the biggest asks that we've had since this COVID-19 has driven people to remote learning. So again, that is on the roadmap. That is definitely being worked on now, and it's just a matter of time before you will actually be able to lock the students out. There's also what's coming is the ability to end the meeting and kick all the students out, and they won't be able to rejoin a finished meeting. All right, very good.
Awesome.
So next steps, let's talk about where we go from here. Remember that aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning. Probably the most important thing there is a feedback link where you can actually ask your questions and you can reach out to us. All right, so there are real people on the end of those fielding your questions and answering them, etc. So jump in there and have a look at that. Also, Microsoft Teams answers are on support.microsoft.com/education. I'll take you in and show you that in a minute. And also our online training is at education.microsoft.com. So let me show you some of these web pages because they're really important. First one is the Educator Center. You can sign in with your Office 365 ID. We've got courses and groups of courses called learning paths. I promise you these are excellent. There's some great stuff on Teams in there, so go in and have a play with that. These courses meet the AITSL standards, so get ready for it. They do count as your required VIT PD. Okay, so you can go in there, make sure you sign in so it'll keep a record of the PD that you do. Individual courses or groups of courses, again, great stuff. And that's education.microsoft.com. Another one I want to draw your attention to is support.office.com/teams. Okay, there's an FAQ here. You can type in your question and it'll find the a series of articles related to your question, or you can actually browse getting started with Teams and channels, tracking your activity, the chat, the meetings and calls, files, etc. All right, so that's a really good place for you to get your basic questions asked around using Teams. Support.office.com/teams. But the one I really want to draw your attention to, again, support.office.com/education. This is where the questions relating to, things like class teams and using it in schools and all those kinds of things, that's happening here on this page. And you can see here there's questions about sections about OneNote, class notebook, learning tool, staff notebook, forms. But up here you've got your Microsoft Teams questions, right? So it's all about using the assignments features and all those kinds of things as well. So that's support.office.com/education. Now I know not everyone is from the department, but a lot of you are. But we have a series of slides and recordings and things that we have done, aka.ms/DET webinars. All right, so if you want to jump in and have a look at some of the stuff that we've done building on today, then please jump in and access that. Please also remember that DLTV will make these slides and the recordings available to you shortly as well. Lastly, I am quite active on social media. Some of you are probably already connected to me. I'm on Twitter at Hojusaram. I'm on LinkedIn. You can just find me as Troy Waller. You'll see a Microsoft animated picture come up of me, and then I'm also on Facebook as well. So just type in Troy Waller Microsoft, you'll find me. Now these are my dedicated professional accounts, and what I do for you is I find the latest greatest stuff around education from the Microsoft space, and I publish that for you. So if you're following me, it's going to automatically appear in your feed and you don't have to go looking for this stuff. All right, but you can also revisit my page if you want. All right, so again, I don't collect you guys as trophies. I'm sharing this with you because it's really good for you to be able to access our stuff. All right, so that's how you find me. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on Facebook, and my email address is there as well. But remembering that aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning, you can also pump your questions through there. I think I might just see, Clara, if there's one more question before we sign off.
Yes, I have one. Is it possible to change the status of an attendee to all students at once, or just individually at this stage?
So if you've got the calendar app, you can actually set the status of students prior to the meeting. But once the meeting has started or you haven't got the calendar app, then you have to do it manually. Okay. But again, we hear you. That is a huge ask. And that's also something that's being worked on. So watch this space. That should turn up in your Teams experience fairly soon. All right. So I want to thank DLTV for having us today. Clara is actually dialing in from Sydney. She's come from the Microsoft store to handle your Q&A. So I want to thank you, Clara, for being a part of this as well. But I do want to again thank DLTV for having us. I hope this is useful to you. Please reach out to us if there's anything we can do. Otherwise, we'll see you guys in the virtual space. Bye-bye.